Thanksgiving is family only. Find somewhere else to eat. I read my mother's message twice, even though the words were impossible to misunderstand. Then I lifted my eyes to the security monitor on the wall of my office. There they were. My mother, Patricia, stood outside Bella's restaurant in a cream coat, smiling while Ethan positioned everyone for a family picture. Vanessa leaned against him, laughing. Behind them were cousins, aunts, and relatives I had spent years helping whenever somebody needed money, a favor, or a rescue. Apparently, I was useful enough for emergencies. Just not Thanksgiving. Through the camera feed, I watched the hostess step forward. Thompson party. My mother smiled brightly. That's us. I reached for the phone on my desk. When the manager answered, I said quietly, "Cancel the Thompson reservation." There was a brief pause. Then came the reply. "Understood, Ms. Drill." I set the receiver down and watched my family's smiles disappear. 20 minutes later, my cell phone began vibrating across the desk. "Mom." I answered. "Lilian, what is going on?" Patricia demanded. "They're refusing to seat us." On the monitor, Ethan was arguing with the hostess, while Vanessa stood behind him with her arms folded. "That's a good question," I said. "What does that mean?" "I'm sure the manager can explain." Patricia lowered her voice. "Whatever you did, fix it." I almost laughed at the certainty in her tone. That morning, she had decided I wasn't family. Now she expected me to save Thanksgiving. I ended the call. For years, Thanksgiving had been the one family tradition I refused to give up on. No matter how strained things became, I showed up. I brought food. I helped pay when Mom insisted everything had to look perfect. I ignored the small insults because some part of me kept believing that if I remained dependable long enough, eventually I would stop feeling like a guest in my own family. But that morning, Patricia had made the rules painfully clear. The latest fight had started months earlier when she asked me for another large family loan. I said no. After that, invitations stopped arriving. Sunday dinners happened without me. Family group chats went quiet whenever I entered them. Then Thanksgiving became the punishment meant to break me. What Patricia didn't know was that, while she had spent years measuring my worth by what I would give her, I had built something of my own behind doors she had never bothered to look through. On the monitor, the restaurant manager approached my family carrying a sealed envelope. Ethan pointed at it. "What's that supposed to be?" The manager stopped directly in front of Patricia. And watching from upstairs, I found myself wondering the same thing they were about to discover. Why would a restaurant need paperwork just to refuse one family a table? My mother's face tightened as the restaurant manager stopped in front of the family. Instead of arguing, he held the envelope against his side and spoke calmly. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. The decision is final." "There has to be some mistake," Patricia replied, forcing a smile. "We've had this reservation for weeks." "I'm aware." "Then seat us." "I'm afraid I can't." The people waiting near the entrance began glancing toward the growing argument. Thanksgiving was Bella's busiest day of the year, and everyone was eager to get inside before their meals cooled. Ethan stepped forward. "Listen, I've dealt with restaurant managers before. Tell me who made this decision." "I'm not authorized to discuss that." "So you canceled us for no reason." "I didn't say there wasn't a reason." The manager's measured tone only made Ethan angrier. From my office upstairs, I watched every second through the security cameras. I didn't feel triumphant. Mostly, I felt tired. This wasn't how I'd imagined spending Thanksgiving. For a moment, I wondered whether I should simply tell the manager to seat them after all. Then my phone screen lit up again. A new message appeared from Patricia. "If this is your doing, you've gone too far." Not "can we talk?" Not "please help." Just another accusation. The doubt I'd felt disappeared. I leaned back in my chair and watched the lobby. Years earlier, things hadn't always been like this. When Ethan's construction company nearly folded after a client backed out, he called me in tears. "Lily, I can't make payroll." Without telling anyone, I wired enough money to keep his employees paid. He promised he'd repay every dollar. He never did. Instead, every holiday afterward, he'd clap me on the shoulder and joke, "Good thing we've got our family's walking ATM." Everyone laughed, including Mom. I laughed too. At least I pretended to. Months later, Mom fell behind on her mortgage. She cried in my kitchen. "I'll lose the house if I don't come up with the money." I transferred the funds before she finished her coffee. She hugged me. "You've saved this family." The gratitude lasted exactly until the next time I refused a request. Little by little, helping stopped being appreciated. It became expected. Every birthday dinner somehow ended with someone asking for money. Every Christmas turned into another financial emergency. Every Thanksgiving became another reminder that my value depended on what I could provide. Then, 3 months before this holiday, Mom called. "I need another loan." "How much?" 80,000. I nearly dropped my phone. 80,000. "It's temporary." "What happened?" "Ethan invested in something that didn't work out." I closed my eyes. I can't keep fixing everyone's decisions. "You can," she answered. "You just don't want to." "I've already done enough." Silence. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "So you've decided money matters more than family." "No," I replied quietly. "I've decided boundaries matter." She hung up. After that conversation, invitations slowly disappeared. Nobody announced I was being excluded. They simply stopped calling. Birthday dinners happened without me. Sunday lunches appeared on social media after they were over. The family group chat continued without including me. No one explained anything. They didn't have to. The message was obvious. If I wasn't paying, I wasn't needed. Back in Bella's lobby, Ethan folded his arms. "This is ridiculous." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "I bet somebody bribed the manager." One of my cousins whispered, "Should we just go somewhere else?" Patricia immediately shook her head. "No, we booked here because it's the nicest restaurant in the city." The manager remained patient. "I understand your frustration." "No," Ethan snapped, "you don't." He took another step closer. "I know people in this town. One phone call and you'll regret this." The manager didn't flinch. "I'm sorry you feel that way." "So who's really behind this?" The manager met his eyes. "The decision came from someone with the authority to make it." That answer changed everything. The family stopped arguing among themselves. Instead, they looked at one another. Someone powerful had made this happen. Someone who knew exactly who they were. Patricia slowly turned toward the restaurant windows. Her expression shifted from anger to suspicion. Then, almost too quietly for anyone else to hear, she whispered, "Did Lilian somehow do this?" Patricia didn't wait for anyone to answer her question. She pulled out her phone and called me again. I let it ring twice before answering. The moment I picked up, she switched the call to speaker. "Lilian," she said sharply, "tell everyone what you've done." Around them, families waiting for their own tables pretended not to listen, but heads slowly turned toward the commotion. The hostess stood quietly behind her podium, while the manager remained a respectful distance away. I glanced at the security monitor. Everyone in my family was staring at the phone. "I don't know what you mean," I replied calmly. "Don't play games." "You canceled our Thanksgiving dinner." "I canceled nothing." "Then tell them to seat us." I was silent for a moment. Finally, I asked one simple question. "If I'm not family, why are you calling me?" The lobby fell completely still. Even Ethan looked away. Patricia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Vanessa broke the silence. This isn't about that. Isn't it? I asked. Because this morning you told me to find somewhere else to eat. Lilian, we're standing in the middle of a restaurant. I know exactly where you're standing. Patricia lowered her voice. Enough, fix this. I can't help you. You won't help us. There is a difference. Without another word, I ended the call. For several seconds, nobody in the lobby spoke. Then Ethan spun toward the manager. That's enough. He jabbed a finger toward the hostess. I want the person actually in charge. The manager nodded politely. I am the general manager. Then explain yourself. Without raising his voice, the manager removed a folded document from the envelope. This is your reservation confirmation. Patricia reached for it. He held onto the paper. It has been canceled under ownership authority. Ownership authority, Ethan repeated. What does that even mean? It means the reservation has been withdrawn by the owner. Vanessa let out a short laugh. Oh, please. She folded her arms confidently. My sister couldn't possibly know the owner of Bella's. A few relatives nodded in agreement. Exactly. She's bluffing. She probably begged somebody for a favor. The manager didn't react. I don't discuss our owner's decisions. So call them. I already have. Then let us speak to them. I'm afraid that isn't possible at this moment. Ethan took another step closer. You know who I am. The manager smiled professionally. I do. Then you know I won't leave until this gets fixed. I'm aware of your position. And it doesn't change mine. The confidence in the manager's voice only made Ethan more frustrated. Around the lobby, conversations had stopped. People waiting for tables were openly watching now. One teenage boy discreetly lifted his phone. His mother gently lowered it. Don't, she whispered. But the damage had already been done. The Thompson family had become the center of attention on Thanksgiving Day. Patricia's face flushed with embarrassment. She looked around and realized strangers had heard nearly every word. She took a slow breath, forcing herself to sound composed. I'd like to speak directly with the owner. The manager inclined his head. I'll let the owner know you've made that request. Without another word, he walked away from the lobby and disappeared through a private hallway leading toward the executive offices. The family waited. No one spoke. Even Ethan stopped packing. Nearly 5 long minutes passed before the manager returned. He stopped in front of Patricia. I've spoken with the owner. And, Patricia demanded, the owner has agreed to meet with you. Relief spread across several faces. There, Ethan muttered, finally. Patricia smiled for the first time since arriving. I knew this was just a misunderstanding. The manager gestured toward the hallway. If you'll follow me. Instead of leading them toward the elegant dining room where Thanksgiving meals were being served. He escorted them toward the private executive offices on the second floor. They reached a polished walnut door. The manager knocked once. A calm voice answered from inside. Come in. He opened the door. Every member of my family froze on the threshold. My family stood motionless in the doorway. The office was elegant without being extravagant. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the dining room below, where guests laughed over Thanksgiving meals, completely unaware of the drama unfolding upstairs. The walls told a different story. Framed photographs documented Bella's transformation over the years. One showed the building before its renovation, faded and nearly abandoned. Another captured the grand reopening, complete with a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Patricia's eyes drifted across the photographs. Then she stopped. Her expression changed. As Lilian. She took a hesitant step closer to one of the frames. There I was, standing beside the restaurant's former owner. Both of us smiling as we cut a ceremonial ribbon. Vanessa frowned. I didn't know you came to the reopening. I wasn't invited, I replied evenly. Ethan walked farther into the office. His attention shifted from the photographs to the awards displayed inside a glass cabinet. Each plaque carried the same inscription: LD Hospitality Group. He read the initials twice, then a third time. His confidence began to fade. What does LD stand for? I didn't answer. Instead, I remained seated behind the executive desk, my hands calmly folded in front of me. The manager quietly closed the office door behind them. No one spoke. The silence was far heavier than any argument could have been. Finally, I reached into the folder lying on my desk. I think you're here because you wanted answers. One by one, I slid documents across the polished wood. The first was the purchase agreement. The second was the business registration. The third listed Bella's ownership structure. Ethan picked up the papers first. His eyes scanned the signature page. Then he looked at me. Then back at the documents. No. His voice barely escaped. This isn't. Vanessa snatched another document from the desk. She read it quickly. Her face lost its color. Mom remained standing. She didn't touch the papers. She simply stared at me. You. She struggled to finish the sentence. You own Bella's. Yes. The room fell silent again. Not the awkward silence of an uncomfortable conversation. The crushing silence that comes when every assumption you've made collapses at once. Ethan slowly lowered the paperwork. You never told us. You never asked. Vanessa shook her head. This can't be right. The manager spoke for the first time since entering the office. The documents are authentic. Patricia finally found her voice. Lilian, if we'd known. I met her eyes. But you didn't. She looked away. Outside the office windows, waiters carried beautifully plated Thanksgiving dinners through the restaurant. Families laughed. Children smiled. Every table was full. Life inside Bella's continued exactly as planned. Inside my office, everything had stopped. Patricia forced a nervous smile. There must have been some misunderstanding today. I reached for my phone. No. I unlocked the screen and placed it on the desk between us. The message filled the display. Thanksgiving is family only. Find somewhere else to eat. Nobody spoke. Nobody claimed the words had been taken out of context. Nobody denied sending them. The evidence required no explanation. Patricia slowly lowered herself into a chair without being invited. Lilian. Her voice had lost every trace of authority. I shouldn't have sent that. No, I answered quietly. You shouldn't have believed it. Ethan stepped forward. Look, emotions were high. They usually are when someone wants money. He flinched. Vanessa crossed her arms. We were angry. I noticed. But this has gone far enough. I looked at each of them in turn. It went far enough the moment I became useful instead of loved. Nobody argued. Because nobody could. A knock interrupted the silence. The manager opened the door slightly. Excuse me, Ms. Drill. Yes. Our dining room is completely full. I know. And every nearby restaurant has just confirmed they're fully booked for Thanksgiving. I nodded once. Thank you. He quietly closed the door again. My family exchanged uneasy looks. For the first time all afternoon, they understood exactly what that meant. There wasn't another table waiting somewhere else. This had been their Thanksgiving. And it was gone. Patricia looked back at me, her eyes filling with tears. Lilian, please. I raised a hand gently. I'm not finished. Nobody spoke after I said those 3 words. I'm not finished. The office remained silent except for the faint sounds of dishes and conversation drifting up from the dining room below. Thanksgiving continued for every family inside Bella's restaurant. Just not mine. I folded my hands on the desk. 3 years ago, Mr. Bell decided to retire. Patricia looked up. The restaurant was going to close. I glanced toward the framed ribbon-cutting photograph. I couldn't stand the thought of seeing a place that meant so much to this community disappear, so I bought it. Ethan stared at me. You bought Bella's. Not overnight, I replied. I invested, borrowed carefully, worked 18-hour days, and rebuilt it. Every dollar I earned went back into this place. Vanessa looked around the office, as if seeing it for the first time. So all of this belongs to my company. I nodded toward the dining room. The staff stayed because they deserved stability. I kept my ownership private because I wanted Bella's reputation to come from the people serving guests, not from my name. The manager quietly stood by the door without interrupting. Only senior management knew the ownership structure, I continued. That was intentional. Patricia swallowed hard. But why didn't you tell us? I gave a small, tired smile. Because every success I ever shared became another reason someone needed money. No one challenged that. They couldn't. When Ethan needed help keeping his business alive, I helped. Ethan lowered his head. When you were behind on the mortgage, Mom, I paid it. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. When Vanessa needed money after changing jobs, I transferred it without asking for anything in return. Vanessa wiped at her eyes but remained silent. I never kept score. I paused. But all of you did. The words landed heavily. When I helped, I was called generous. I looked directly at Patricia. When I finally said no, I became selfish. She covered her mouth. Lilian, I'm sorry. I slowly picked up my phone again. I want you to hear your own words. I read the message aloud. Thanksgiving is family only. Find somewhere else to eat. Every syllable echoed through the office. No one interrupted. No one claimed it had been a joke. No one said I had misunderstood. When I finished, I gently placed the phone back on the desk. The reservation wasn't canceled because I wanted revenge. I shook my head. It was canceled because I finally accepted what your message told me. Patricia looked confused. What do you mean? You decided I wasn't family. I met her eyes steadily. So I stopped allowing people who rejected me to benefit from what I built. Tears rolled down Patricia's face. I didn't think. I know. She reached across the desk. Please, let us start over. Ethan nodded quickly. We made a mistake. A terrible one, Vanessa added. I believed they regretted what had happened. But I also understood why. They regretted the consequences. That wasn't the same thing as understanding the years that had led to this moment. I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving, I said gently. But today's decision stands. The manager stepped forward. The reservation remains canceled. Nobody argued. Not because they agreed. Because they knew they had no argument left. After a long silence, Patricia stood. She looked older than she had an hour earlier. I never imagined we'd lose you. I offered a sad smile. You didn't lose me today. I paused. You started losing me years ago. She lowered her head. Without another word, the manager escorted my family downstairs. He didn't rush them. He didn't embarrass them. He simply walked with them to the front entrance. Several relatives who had witnessed the earlier confrontation quietly pieced together what had happened. By evening, the story had spread through the extended family. Not as gossip, as truth. People who had always assumed I was distant began calling to apologize. Some admitted they had believed Patricia whenever she claimed I cared more about work than family. Others confessed they had never known how much financial help I had quietly given over the years. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. The facts spoke for themselves. In the months that followed, everything changed. I stopped paying family debts. I stopped rescuing people from decisions they refused to learn from. Instead, I expanded Bella's to a second location, then a third. I also established a hospitality scholarship for young people who had talent but lacked support at home. Helping others still mattered to me. The difference was that I chose people who appreciated the opportunity instead of expecting it. As for Patricia, Ethan, and Vanessa, our relationship never returned to what it had been. There were phone calls, letters, apologies. I accepted them with kindness. But forgiveness didn't require me to return to the same unhealthy pattern. Every Thanksgiving since then, Bella's has remained full. The dining room is filled with families celebrating together, employees sharing meals after their shifts, and friends who have become family through loyalty rather than obligation. Sometimes I walk through the restaurant before service begins. I look at every carefully prepared table, every place setting, every candle. Then I remember the text message that once made me believe I had nowhere to belong. I was wrong. Home was never the table they refused to let me sit at. Home was the one I had built with my own hands. And that Thanksgiving taught me the most important lesson of my life. The people who try to deny your place in their world should never have the power to decide your worth.